Yossi, please. Good afternoon to all of the honorable audience, to my friend Manuel Trachtenberg. We've met in the past and we've worked in the past. Thank you. Professor Uzi Rabi, I had the pleasure of appearing before you at the important Dayan Center. To my friend Major General Tamir Heyman, to the Ambassador of Bahrain in Israel, my dear friend, His Excellency, welcome to our humble INSS Summit. I will go immediately to the former head of the Mossad, Ephraim Halevi. Welcome to everyone. I won't go over the list of honorable people here. I was asked to speak in Hebrew, and those who don't know Hebrew will receive simultaneous English translation. We will try to take a piece of the crystal ball that Professor Trachtenberg spoke of to see if there is a practical meaning to all that is happening around us in the arena. I think those who see real intelligence, we are already retired, the Major General and myself. We are still in the need of formal intelligence, but we can also try to understand insights from the past and the present, from what we see, perhaps, in a less formal way. In the past, these presentations began with a question mark when we wrote A New World Order in the Middle East. It was to ask if there was a new order in the Middle East. Why? Because we got used to two peace agreements only, between us and our neighbors from the East and the South, Egypt in the 1970s and Jordan in the 1990s. An agreement, if you wish, the Oslo Agreement, which was supposed to lead to a much greater process, and then everything stopped. During many years, we didn't see anything that would lead us to a new world order in the Middle East. This thing is now taking place. Things that we dreamt about in the past are taking place now, and we are watching them continue to happen. We chose to focus on something that Professor Trachtenberg mentioned, the U.S. presence in the arena. The U.S. presence in the arena was seemingly, we can say, on a practical level, certainly as Israelis, a presence without borders, especially after there was an exit of other countries from the Middle East. Following the agreement with Egypt, the United States replaced Russia in the arena, other powers disappeared, and the United States came to dominate. This happened over many years, only now we're having a different experience. The first experience that we are experiencing, we can see as a result of the Arab Spring, the wrongly named Arab Spring. The Arab Spring, which began in Tunisia, you remember, went south to Egypt, Mubarak, Morsi, El-Sisi in the current period. Upheavals upon upheavals. It goes northwards to Syria, and in Syria we begin to see the unacceptable to us, to humanity. President Assad kills his people with gas, with nerve gas, with mustard gas, and we are furious. The United States does not handle this in an acceptable military manner, as we had remembered the U.S. dealing with events like this before. Instead, it uses the Russian capabilities, and it calls Russia back into the Middle East. And it's now present, invited by Western powers and by President Assad, and it sits here, not far. Tamir, you remember we had a discussion about how to remove the Revolutionary Guards from the Israeli border and who entered between us as a buffer. It was in reality Russian military police. Russian military police stood between us and the lower border of the Revolutionary Guards in Syria itself. A new actor that you cannot ignore in the arena, who comes up in every discussion. China arises in the discussion. China enters as a very serious player. We will see it at the end of the presentation. The Chinese presence exists. It exists and the world cannot ignore it. A question: who can tell me the world policy towards China? The American policy towards China. China controls with its Thai arm the world of semiconductors and chips. You remember all the silicon. China is present not only in terms of technology, but also in terms of policy. We'll get to that soon. We cannot ignore it. We left the map on the screen. Look at the size of Iran.
Not the regular Pavlovian response of what do we do with Iran? Look at the size of Iran. It can easily cover 80, 90% of Europe with its size. It's a huge country. A very sophisticated population. Colleagues here in the audience, my former colleagues in the Mossad, know this. These people, scientists, they believe in education, a nation that believes in academic studies. They believe in broadening or deepening the understanding or the influence of the Shiite axis in the region. I don't know if there is such a vision, but practice shows that they do this throughout the region, southern Iraq, passing armaments and rockets into Syria, and from there into this purple country called Lebanon, the hands of Hezbollah. This Shiite axis is done. In fact, Iran does it, even though they're sanctioned very heavily. They fund it and they do it, and we can deal with this later. And there's much to be learned and much to be realized about the Russian-Ukraine war. There's a war that maybe it's similar to the Middle East. And what does the West do there? What is the response of NATO to the war between Russia and Ukraine? What do we do to counter, if you will, the Russian occupation of eastern Ukraine? Mainly arming Ukraine, but physically, physical war, less. So when you look at dominance that was in the past, and maybe still in existence today, we have new players that we see in the region. In the past, we used to look at India as a different version, different kind of country. First, it became to the biggest country in the world as far as its population. If I'm not mistaken, close to 1.5 billion human beings. When we accumulate everything we have on the map, these flags alone, compared to the Western world, what we called, we reach half the population of the world, nominally. 1.5 billion in India, 1.3 billion Chinese, add Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Indonesia, all these other Muslim countries that are not necessarily aligned with the West and the values that we believe in. And you will see a nominal influence that is intensifying of countries that are not, how should we put it, don't bow their heads to the values, to the esteemed values of the West. You could say, yes, as an example, yes, you put severe sanctions on Russia, India says. We are not necessarily playing along with this game. China certainly not. And you see contacts between our former colleagues and diplomats in the senior levels in both countries, or the 5 countries that I discussed, that are trying to organize a different kind of arrangement that does not bow its head to what we knew in the past. United States will say and everyone will do. I'm not sure that this sentence still holds. without looking at what's happening practically on the ground. We're still in the Middle East, friendly countries, and some that are less friendly. I'm moving to the next issue to explain maybe the new order. This is a slide. This picture, I think, is very powerful. It's also very modern. It happened less than a year ago. Half a year ago, to be exact, December 2022, there is a significant spirit of Arab countries, theoretically Arab League or extended Arab League, way beyond the Arab League. At its center, Xi Jinping, president of China, we call it the ruler, can use different terms to call him, the Chinese leader. This teaches us something that is not here, but it should be said maybe in the background of this image. Remember the visit of President of the United States in the region. Remember the picture of two fists. President Biden with MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince, standing in the center of this picture. We are in a place where Saudi Arabia, that this is the discussion of the day here, and we're reaching this topic now, identifies other players. Not only identifies other players, but is willing to talk to them. They won't hide this anymore. They won't do it behind closed doors. They won't hide it and say, we don't have, but we do have. The MBS, with all his glory, with his known problems in the past that Professor Trachtenberg discussed, stands on the front line, on the stage, a young man, 37 years. We know what he did. We know his next role. His nomination is guaranteed. I don't think anything's going to change. Standing and leading something else. And his new leadership, as we see it now, is by his side. I'm just telling you, notice there is an alternative. I translate this slide as saying, yes, I don't disregard the United States, but there are alternatives, friends. You don't want to sell me F-35? I have other options. You won't give me financial support and maybe enter me, you want to sanction me like you did with other countries? I'm just telling you, or sending you a signal. I, too, like my friends, Arab countries, have alternatives, and I won't hesitate to cooperate and to seize the opportunities behind them. The other issue, of course, the meeting. Also, this happened on December 22. This created some kind of a change, if you will, in the perception of Saudi Arabia, and we're going out with this. We're taking this forward. We in the intelligence community saw all along the contacts between Saudi Arabia and almost all countries of the world. I didn't see them. I don't remember these contacts so overt at the front of the stage. MBS says, we're not shy anymore. Here's China, here's Saudi Arabia. Here we are. This is something that I think sends a very powerful message that it could be. And this maybe are the bottom lines of this issue, that why does the United States want to talk to Saudi Arabia all of a sudden? What's the hurry? Something else happened, maybe more interesting. And I think you related to this, Manu, correctly. There is an issue here that we, if you allow me, we saw this for many, many years. And I just want to remind the wrong Pavlovian responses, I think are wrong. What happened? Saudi Arabia talked to others. And by the way, I used to speak to my counterpart, and we knew each other very well. We didn't shake hands, never. But he's the head of the Iranian National Security Council. When I was head of Mossad, he was there. We know him and his opinions. But Iran, like Iran, after the era of Rouhani, despite Raisi, known the butcher or the hanger from Tehran or other horrific titles, Iran knows how to speak softly with the West. They did this in the first Obama administration. In his first term, they did this in the second engagement with the Obama administration in July 2015 and reached the JCPOA. They speak to the West, the P5+1, as we know very well. And There is sometimes a debate: was it right or was it wrong to disengage from leave the agreement? Yes or no? Is it good? Is it bad? That's not for now. Iran knows how to speak diplomatically. They learn the game, and when they learn the game, and when their foreign presence, if you will, now, as we have now, the Chinese presence comes back or comes to the fore so powerfully to the Middle East, MBS asks himself, he didn't consult with me, but I'm sure he asks himself, according to foreign reports we met, and I don't approve this, but he's a thinking man, he asks himself, MBS, who will broker the deal? What am I left with, he will ask himself. I am threatened. My military might exists. Maybe it is weaker compared to the Iranians. It's not that I didn't have contacts with Iran in the past. There were relations, almost even full relations up until 2016. There was a problem. We softened our relations or reduced the relations. We want to come back to center stage now. The JCPOA, that was a serious issue. J5+1 was China, Russia, United States. Think about this. Germany, England, UK, Germany, IAEA supported intelligence-wise or practically from the outside, maybe as a nuclear tribunal, if you will. And the agreement was signed. This bunch can't organize for him at the current time, maybe doesn't want to arrange contact with Iran that is again under sanction regime. But this is happening now. And center stage you have the Iranian National Security Advisor, close to Khamenei today. We have Minister of Foreign Affairs, and the Saudi Minister of Foreign Affairs, the most senior politician in the high diplomacy, and the Chinese senior leadership, and they're all back in close relations. I agree that when we look at this as Israelis, we see two images that make sense. One, oh no, they are collaborating with the enemy. And second, is this distancing our opportunities to sign with Saudi Arabia future peace agreements? I'll tell you what I think later. And then we ask the questions. Will this issue, everything that happened, is it necessarily against Israel? Are we going to be influenced by this renewed connection that was, and as I said, re-emerged and came front stage? Another question. Do we understand why Saudi Arabia is doing it? I showed before the map, I showed you the interests. What does Saudi Arabia gain from this bilateral connection with Iran? It's very clear. Iran is not a country that you are in the region and that you want to fight with it, okay? You don't want to clash with Iran. We have here with us the Bahrainian ambassador, a good friend, and the Bahrainian king was one of the brave people of the Middle East that signed a peace agreement with us as a small and threatened country, threatened by Iran, in and out. And sitting nearby, we're talking about Cyprus sometimes, see how physically Cyprus is to us? It's much closer, they are much closer to Iran than we are to Cyprus. Sometimes it's 20 miles. Some Persian Gulf countries to Iran are very close. When Iran develops such a powerful military might and the ability to negatively penetrate these countries, you necessarily have to develop answers. So, is a relation between Saudi Arabia and Iran, does this have to do with Israel? I believe, and this is my truth, I say no. I think that what Israel here must do is to try to go into their shoes or into their mind and understand that their purpose is not to tell us that we are farther away, but to tell us, listen carefully, guys, understand us. By the way, France and Germany have embassies in Iran. What does that mean? Is this against Israel? The Netherlands has an embassy inside of Tehran. Does this mean anything towards Israel? Of course not. So Saudi Arabia is the same thing. Things have to happen bilaterally that do not necessarily influence the state of Israel at the current time. And so to the largest question, without a crystal ball, what someone once told me, hope is not a work plan, okay? Is normalization of Saudi Arabia and Israel, is this possible? I assess and am based here on personal knowledge on the matter, certainly possible. Absolutely possible. In the Middle East, there is a new age where brave leadership like the Bahraini king, other brave like Mohammed bin Zayed of UAE, other like the current king of Morocco, and there were a few other efforts in Sudan, which is also crumbling again, but also the Sudanese signed a deal with us. Brave leaders know how to create normalization, and I think they are present, they are there. And with these, I think we can create something that is big and important. Another issue, and we tried to synthesize questions that came to our desk about the nuclear deal. 5 minutes do I have? Nuclear deal, yes, no. As I think there is no vitality to the nuclear deal. This happens because, positively or negatively, because of new information that surfaced, that proved that Iran was facing a nuclear bomb or bombs. This has been carefully learned about unmonitored sites that weren't disclosed to the IAEA, activities that we didn't know, scientists that we didn't know of their existence and their actions. IAEA itself says, this way we cannot sign a deal. Come clean, they tell Iran. Tell us, answer these questions, everything you didn't answer in the past. For instance, all the potential PMD, potential military dimension, everything that is colored nuclear or militarily nuclear. Explain to us what our intelligence means, some of it through Israel, and see if we can go back to a deal, yes or no. Are these things related? I think it's a different axis that is not necessarily tied. If the brokerage of the deal with Iran, the relation between Saudi Arabia and Iran, was under the auspices of the West, I would tend to think that there is a direct or indirect relation to the nuclear deal. Here I see no connection. Of course, we spoke about China as a central power. The same thing, by the way, these are the national security advisors of both countries. On the left, of course, you know him. You saw him in the previous image. Shamahani, he is the national security advisor in Iran. And on the right of the image, you see Sheikh Tahnoun bin Zayed, the head of the National Security Council. Someone in the audience says he was dismissed. Okay, Mazel Tov, he's retired. Is he receiving a full pension? And on the right, by the way, dismissing someone in Iran, you know what this means. Sometimes it's a cycle. You're out and you're back in, like other countries. On the right, National Security Advisor of Abu Dhabi. Let's put it this way. Nothing negative I can say about our relation with Bahrain and Abu Dhabi. Nothing. I think that these relations are peace. Perfect peace. We understood, we signed, we finalized things, we spoke clandestinely for a long time, we brought it out to the light, we signed agreements, and Abu Dhabi understands. And we saw this for a long time, that there's one threat from the East that you cannot disregard. And when you can't disregard, or you don't want to disregard the threats from the East, there's one thing you need to do, that is talk. So this negativity or this threat won't emerge from the East. You have to take into consideration their size and their regional interests. An image that repeats itself now, we saw China signing an agreement or brokering an agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And now we see Raisi, as we know very well, the famous Raisi. Also here we see countries that tell themselves or tell others we have a different world view, a worldview of higher interest than maybe we had in the past, and we're not ashamed to state them overtly for all to see. These are the leaders, the brave leaders so far. I think also here there was a lot of bravery. MBS approves overflights of Air India from Tel Aviv to New Delhi, crossing over Saudi Arabia. He approved it personally. These are trust-building measures. There were other trust-building measures along the way. I know El Al also wants to fly, and hopefully we will reach that too. There are other things we need to do in order to get everyone used to the country itself and the population of the new reality. Another issue is about the Palestinian issue, the Israeli arena, other components that are all an important influential aspect of bringing Saudi Arabia to the table. We have one holy site in the Islamic world called Haram al-Sharif, or Temple Mount. They have two. And they're not certain to this point that the Muslim world will forgive them, and they keep checking the water to see what peace agreements in Israel will do to their stance in the Muslim world because of Mecca and Medina, the two important holy sites in Saudi Arabia. I think there are a few other large issues or questions that we would need to deal with, take out our many crystal balls the best we can. One huge issue that's happening, going on almost 2 years, the Ukraine-Russia war. I met a senior American a few weeks ago. We had a debate in the room. There were also representatives of official representatives of neighboring countries in the Middle East. And we asked him, sir, what do you think is going to happen with the Ukraine-Russia war? And he said, I'm translating, I fear that in a year from now you will ask me the same question. And I will answer you the same thing in a year's time. Henry Kissinger said the only missing component here is a broker. Someone needs to cut the deal. Someone needs to make this connection that will probably not finish with some glorious victory of the Russians or the Ukrainians. Ukraine is being destroyed, 20 million refugees. Russia is standing strong. Also, Ukraine is standing, but differently. And the end, who knows what the end will be. The other question about the nuclear deal, I don't see, as of now, the deal coming back in its previous form, unless IAEA, as I said, will approve it. We didn't talk about it, but we should discuss the issue of NATO's place in the modern world, a pact that was made in 1945, and the Warsaw Pact that is not existence anymore. And even Finland now joined. Finland that always preserved its neutrality with its Russian neighbor, now joined NATO 2023. What is its role then? When no one, by the way, or maybe not by the way, maybe this is the essence, are not willing to help physically Ukraine in the world, not willing to fight its fight? Excellent question about the role of this great organization. They were also very strongly present in Afghanistan and other players. These are two images that I chose to conclude my presentation with. They both explained, self-explanatory. This is the peace agreement on the White House lawn. I was there, excited. I was right here, the bottom of the picture. I sat there, tears in my eyes. I was moved. You see the President of the United States, Prime Minister of Israel, two ministers from Bahrain, UAE, historic peace agreements, I must say. And on the other side, an image that emphasizes a bit of the current era on a new dominant broker and no less significant. Bottom line, I assess a normalization deal, peace treaty with Saudi Arabia is possible. I am carefully stating, because I don't base my comments on current intelligence, I assess that these contacts, if they are monitored carefully, brokered well, with positive good guarantees by the United States, with also the right things said about the Palestinian arena, but without concrete commitments to moves on the ground, because this is more complicated on all sides. I think this is needed and possible. Thank you very much.